on the lake surface, which is actually the main food source for the bacteria living down there. And like I said, there's 3 different species of Haloarchaea, and they're all adapted to different parts of the lake. Like some like deeper locations, some like to eat the protein in the water, and some like to eat the sugars that the green algae produces. Speaking of algae, I mentioned earlier that 99%. Imagine the year is 1840. Percent of Antarctica is covered in an ice sheet. Well, one of the few places that's not covered by an ice sheet is McMurdo Dry Valley, and it kind of looks like Mars there. But one interesting site there is Taylor Glacier, which has a 5-story waterfall that pours into Lake Bonny. What's interesting about this particular waterfall is it looks a lot like blood. Yeah, it looks like somebody just stabbed the glacier and it's bleeding out. So they named it Blood Falls, and yeah, only recently scientists have been able to figure out what makes it look that color. Cut? Yeah, Dr. Ken Livy is a scientist at Johns Hopkins University, and he used transmission electron microscopes to basically examine samples of the Blood Falls waters. And what he discovered were tiny iron-rich nanospheres that oxidize, which turns the water red. And nanospheres apparently occur in nature. I think of nanospheres as like a molecular thing with graphite or something like that, but they are real things that happen in nature. They're about 1/100th the size of an average human red blood cell, and they've got their own unique chemical and physical characteristics. And these nanospheres come from a lake that's about 400 meters underground. It's very salty, and it's cut off from the air, so it just kind of like sits there, but it's very iron-rich, so once it seeps through the fissures and hits the air, the iron-rich water rusts, creating blood falls. Yeah, I've got to do it. Coming this Sunday to the Poughkeepsie Civic Center, Tokamak and Stellarator featuring Blood Falls. Get tattoos free. Antarctica's largest ice shelf is the Ross Ice Shelf, named after Dr. James Clark Ross, who discovered it in 1841. And when I say large, I mean it's about the size of France. It covers over 500,000 square kilometers. It's also several hundred meters thick. All of that, very interesting. What really makes it interesting is that it sings. Kind of. No, that is not the newest Aphex Twin single. That is an actual ice shelf vibrating. It's caused by winds blowing across the snow dunes that create vibrations on the surface, and those vibrations create seismic tones. The thing is, we can't actually hear those vibrations. They're seismic tones, so scientists have to use seismic sensors to hear the songs. What you're hearing has been ranged up quite a bit so that we can hear it. And it was discovered by accident. They were actually installing these seismic sensors to try to observe other things, and they kept hearing these sounds, and they didn't know where it was coming from. And also, the songs change based on environmental shifts, like snow melting or moving. In the late 1950s, something really strange was discovered in the northern Wilkes Land in East Antarctica. It's a gravity anomaly, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's where there's a difference between the predicted value of gravity at a specific site and what's actually observed there. So yeah, there's just a place in Antarctica where gravity works differently. You know, that thing. What could cause gravity to work differently in a certain spot? Well, in this case, it looks like it was a giant impact crater. Yeah, studies have shown that there's an impact crater underneath the ice sheet that's 450 kilometers across, which would make it twice the size of the Chicxulub crater in Mexico. You know, the one that wiped out all the dinosaurs. NASA is actually who found this gravity anomaly as part of their Gravity Research and Climate Experiment mission in 2006. Now, there's still studies to be done here. It's not completely confirmed yet, but if this were an asteroid impact, they think it might have actually been strong enough to break up Gondwana land as the supercontinent that separated Australia and Antarctica. In 2017, a giant hole opened up in Antarctica. How big is this hole? It's the size of Ireland. It's a hole the size of Ireland. A hole. It's 78,000 square kilometers. It's actually the largest hole found in Antarctica since the 1970s, which implies that there were bigger holes found in the 70s? It's a structure called a polynya, which is basically an area of open water and sea ice. It's located in the Weddell Sea in the Southern Ocean, and it formed basically because the warmer water in the deeper parts of the sea pushed the warm water up, causing the ice on the surface to melt. And then as the water makes contact with the cooler surface water, it sinks again. And then it's reheated and pushed to the surface, and this goes on over and over again. Now there's a lot of these types of holes, these polynyas, that have popped up in the sea ice all around Antarctica, but this one is massive, and they're still not exactly sure how one this big could form with the methods that they're aware of anyway. So it's a bit of a mystery. In 1964, the British Royal Navy's HMS Protector visited Beauvais Island, which is located here, between the Cape of Good Hope and Antarctica. And while there, they found a lagoon and a waterlogged lifeboat. This boat didn't have any sails, didn't have any markings, just a nameless boat in a lagoon in a remote part of the world. They also found a pair of oars and a 44-gallon barrel, but they didn't find any signs of life or any human remains. It seemed to have just been this abandoned lifeboat, and nobody knows who abandoned it or where they went. Even weirder, in 1966, another expedition went to that same spot, and this time the lifeboat was gone. There was no mention of it. Like,
building something?
It just disappeared. There are ghost ships. Are there ghost lifeboats? Because this might be a ghost lifeboat. And now that I've talked about ghost ships, it's time to pivot a little bit. Everything that I've talked about so far is just kind of like weird things that happen in a weird part of the world. There's some really crazy stuff going around about Antarctica. So let's get into that. About 10 years ago, a story started swirling around regarding Lake Vostok, which I was talking about earlier, and the life that might live down there. According to this story, a Russian drilling crew was working at Lake Vostok in 2012 when they came across apparently a monster octopus that they named Organism 46b. This monster octopus apparently had all the kind of qualities you would expect from an octopus. It was apparently really smart. It was actually able to disable the worker's radio. It paralyzed prey by releasing venom into the water, and it could shapeshift into other shapes, which octopuses are kind of famous for. And according to the story, the researchers were able to capture the octopus, but Russian authorities showed up and took it away and denied that it ever existed and that nothing was ever found there. And because of that, Organism 46b remains a mystery, and some even believe that Putin plans to breed the octopus as a bit of a military weapon. Thanks, Antarctica. Speaking of monsters, some people believe that Nazis built a secret base in Antarctica where they took Hitler at the end of World War II. There have been no shortage of Hitler actually survived stories that happened since World War II. This is just the Antarctica version of it. And people who believe in this story also believe that from this base they were able to defeat American and British military by shooting down their planes with the use of UFOs. The US did eventually destroy this base in the 1950s with nuclear weapons, but you wouldn't know this because various governments around the world, of course, concealed all this knowledge. And if a Nazi base using UFOs for war wasn't enough to blow your mind, well, guess what? We have wound up exactly where we all expected to be. Aliens. Because, Nazis flying UFOs, that's crazy. It's actually aliens. And I guess it makes a little bit of sense. If there are aliens living here on planet Earth, why not go to the most desolate and isolated place in the world to set up a bit of a base and launch all your UFOs from? And of course, there's no shortage of photographs that have weird anomalies in it that you can't quite explain that look like UFOs. And last but not least are the stories about pyramids or ancient civilizations that have been buried under the ice of Antarctica. Some people believe that this might have been like an ancient Egyptian civilization with the pyramids and stuff. Some people believe it might have been Atlantis. After all, we know that Antarctica used to be a more tropical continent that was in a more suitable place for life and civilizations to flourish. I mean, if you're going to have an ancient city or civilization get buried underwater, why not get buried under ice? So what are we to make of all these crazy stories coming out of Antarctica? You know, mysterious lifeboats, monster octopuses, aliens, Nazis. Well, here comes the wet blanket.
From the picturesque Shenandoah National Park to its majestic wildlife and friendly local residents, Skyline Valley is a welcome home to all. Best of luck out there.
You could be in the passenger seat of a rideshare, or in the back seat of your Aunt Jenny's minivan, between her two delightful twins, as you hurtle towards the airport late for your flight. Or you could be in the best seat of all, your own, by driving and enjoying stress-free airport parking. Put yourself in the driver's seat at Brisbane Airport Parking.
So we can start with that mysterious lifeboat. So in the early 2010s, online researchers actually figured out what it was, and it turns out it was a Soviet Antarctic whaling fleet that visited Beauvais Island in November of 1958. People were sent ashore, but the bad weather set in and people were temporarily stranded. So there's not a whole lot of story behind this. A helicopter picked them up a few days later. They weren't stranded for very long, but they did leave the lifeboat behind in the lagoon. Why it disappeared later, it probably just sunk further down into the water. The monster octopus in Lake Vostok has a pretty simple explanation. It turns out, it's entirely a work of fiction. It can be traced back to a specific blog post by a guy named C. Michael Forsyth, who was a former writer for, yes, the Weekly World News. Remember when you would go to the grocery store and you would see the Weekly World News and you just knew that it was fiction and it wasn't real and it was just like fake stuff? Feels like we've lost a little bit of that lately. Yeah, I guess the Weekly World News isn't really around anymore, but he published this on his own personal blog page and it was clearly labeled fiction. I guess this is kind of like the Sergei Ponomarenko video that I did. It was a story that kind of took on a life of its own, and turns out the whole thing was made up. But it's easy to believe because, yeah, colossal squid do exist in the Southern Ocean, but because it's a subglacial lake, it lacks sunlight, has those extremely cold temperatures, it's unlikely that a complex creature of that size could survive in it, especially something as big and complex as an octopus. Now, regarding all those pyramids that people claim to have found in Antarctica, it turns out that there's just a lot of mountains in the world that look like pyramids, especially when shot from above with the sunlight hitting it at a certain angle. And in Antarctica especially, you have a lot of like the tops of mountains kind of peeking out above the glacial ice, which it looks like the size of a pyramid, but it's actually a full-on mountain. You just don't see most of the mountain. This, by the way, is called a nunatak. That's a mountain or a hill surrounded by glacial ice. In fact, there's a whole range of mountains in Antarctica called the Ellsworth Mountain Range. It was discovered in 1935, and yeah, it features a lot of these pyramid-like shapes. This one in particular is 1,265 meters tall from the base of the mountain to the top, but all we really see is the top of that mountain sticking out of the ice. So yeah, it looks like pyramids to a lot of people. Now, as far as the Atlantis story goes, ice has covered Antarctica for 15 million years, which is way longer than humans have walked the Earth. So if we were somehow able to establish an ancient civilization at the South Pole, it would have only happened after everything was completely frozen over. Which seems impossible considering the temperatures and the fact that there's just not a whole lot of food there to stay warm and nourished. So yeah, stories about Atlantis are usually vague and lacked any solid facts. So like, yeah, when Asians and Europeans talked about unmapped places in the past, they could have been talking about Australia or Oceania. So now we get to the Nazi conspiracy theories, and here's the deal about that one. There's a little bit of truth to it. Nazis did actually land and camp in Antarctica, but it wasn't for a military base. It was for a whaling station so that Germany wouldn't have to be dependent on whale oil from Norway. The Germans actually landed in an area that was already claimed by Norway called the Dronning Maud Land. But, you know, they planted flags there and they called it Neuschwabenland. Sure, I pronounced that perfectly. But yeah, the area was abandoned by the Nazis in 1945, which makes sense because Nazis were out of power at that point. But yeah, thousands of scientists have visited that area since the 1950s. It's been mapped by satellite, aircraft. Nothing's there. And it is also true that the US and Britain conducted military and bombing operations around Antarctica. But those were test missions. They didn't have anything to do with Nazis well after the World War II. They seem to have been conflated with the Nazi base to create stories about secret missions and UFOs. It all just comes together into a nice conspiracy stew. And speaking of the sightings of UFOs that I was talking about, most of the crashed UFOs I was talking about can easily be explained as rocks or mountain peaks or tipped over icebergs. The fact of the matter is, Antarctica is a very strange alien landscape where things don't look normal because they're not normal, and it's just really easy to apply wild and crazy stuff to the things that you see that don't make sense to you. By the way, one more thing, I didn't even talk about this earlier, but the Earth isn't hollow and Antarctica isn't a gateway into the planet. The hollow Earth theory actually goes back to Edmund Halley, the same guy behind Halley's Comet, who came up with the idea in the 17th century. But this theory's been disproven since the 1730s, and modern science has proven that the Earth is actually composed of rock and iron. It's all right there. Trust the shirt, people. Now, what does make Antarctica really cool is all the research and scientific experiments that are being conducted there, including the life in Lake Vostok. No, it's not a monster octopus, but yes, they have found evidence of life down there. So in 1998, a joint team of scientists drilled an ice core down to Lake Vostok, looking for life. And by the way, if you're thinking to yourself, oh god, did they contaminate a potential ecosystem that's been kept pristine for 15 million years? Well, you're ahead of me. The team was made up of scientists from Russia, France, and the US, and the ice core they drilled was one of the deepest ice cores ever drilled. It went down 3,623 meters, or 11,886 feet. That's over 2 miles. They stopped, thankfully, about 100 meters above the water level, but even in that ice, they found extremophile microbes, so there's definitely life down there. In 2012, a Russian team got a bit more bold and were able to actually collect water from the lake. I know that sounds like they just dipped the ladle down there and took a sip, but they were actually really careful about it.
When we first considered going camping, we never thought it'd be this simple. Every second week.
So here's how they did it. They drilled down to like just above the water barrier and then slowly, just a little bit at a time, pushed forward until the pressure from underneath forced the water up into the borehole. And then they pulled the drill out as soon as the water went up there. That water then froze, which plugged up the hole. And then they drilled into that plug and collected a sample from that ice that was made from lake water. This method's been used several times since then, and there are samples that have been studied, and the consensus seems to be that there's a diverse and teeming ecosystem down there. DNA sequencing found over 3,500 unique gene sequences, 94% of which were bacteria and 4% were from more advanced eukaryotes. These species were described mostly as what one would expect to find in, brackish water around deep sea sediments and thermal vents, but while the vast majority of the life that was found was unicellular organisms, there was some multicellular ones in there. Nothing much more complex than that, though. Except, a team in 2020 found DNA that was 97% similar to a type of rock cod that lives off the coast of Antarctica called Notothenia cordyceps. Now, most don't think that there's actual species of cod living down there. It's expected that's a contamination of some kind, because there has been some contamination. Yeah, Lake Vostok has been a bit of a flashpoint among environmentalists because water samples have shown traces of kerosene and antifreeze in it. Yeah, one of the problems that they ran into when they were drilling this, again, 2-mile-long borehole, is that sections of this borehole would freeze over. So the Russians started using kerosene and freon to keep the holes open and lubricated. And they didn't just use a little bit, they used 60 tons of the stuff. Now, it wasn't like they were just pouring it into the lake. There were only trace amounts that have been found in it, but still. Anyway, there's a whole debate around that, but that's just one thing that's been studied in Antarctica. We studied things like the ozone hole, million-year-old DNA, neutrinos from outer space, and evidence of fires during the time of the dinosaurs. Oh, and remember that Mars meteorite that they thought might have had fossilized bacteria in it? Yeah, that was found in Antarctica. They've also used Antarctica to study team dynamics for future missions to other planets. All of which is really cool, but this video is already running really long, so I'm going to add an extra section to the version that I upload to Nebula, because I can do whatever I want there. Yeah, in my last video I used a clip from the Jetsons intro, and some copyright troll tried to get my video taken down. That's one of like 1,000 different things I have to think about when I post things on YouTube. And look, I love YouTube, but I gotta be honest, I kind of like not having to think about all that when I post on Nebula. YouTube rules don't apply there. I make the rules. Now, there's been a lot of talk of creators starting their own streaming services, which, God bless. But, Nebula's been doing this for years with hundreds of creators at this point, all of whom post early and ad-free, and like me, include additional content for our viewers. And Nebula's really been expanding lately, getting into original series like the ever-popular Jet Lag, real-life Lore's War Room, and Neo's Underexposure series. Plus, there's a new news division run by TLDR News, and something I'm really excited about is they're getting into short and feature film productions, one of which I'm actually going to be helping out with next month. And it really is a place where the creators run the show, so if you really want to support a big old group of thoughtful creators and get access to all kinds of exclusive stuff, just click the link down in the description below or scan this code right here. You can get 40% off your annual subscription. That comes out to $30, about $2.50 a month. Or if I've done such a good job of selling this and you have decided right here and now that you don't want to just sign up for Nebula, you want to have Nebula for the rest of your life. They do have a lifetime membership. It's $300. And I know that's Oil Tycoon money, but if you have it and you're interested, it does go almost directly toward new original content, including some things that I'm working on myself. So it's really like you're helping me get a dream project made, if that helps. Anyway, it's nebula.tv/Joe Scott. Your interest is much appreciated. Thanks a lot for watching. If this is your first time here, these are the kind of things that I do on this channel. I talk about fun topics that increase your knowledge and make the world a little bit more interesting. So if you haven't seen any of my stuff before, this is new to you, maybe click down on the sidebar if you're on your website or on your computer. There's plenty of videos down there that the algorithm should be showing you, or you can just kind of take a look right here. Google thinks you might like that one. Take a look at them. I invite you to subscribe if you enjoy it. I do come back with videos every other Monday right now, usually every Monday. Anyway, that's it for now. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please share down in the comments what your favorite Antarctica fact is, if there's anything that I missed or whatnot. And outside of that, you guys have a good rest of your week. Stay safe, and I'll see you next Monday.
The future of money is instantly sending money to Revolut friends with zero transfer fees. Send, spend, and save with Revolut. Download the app to see what you're missing.
Let's play Find the DEA Agent at the bar.
Your brother's the biggest trafficker in Miami. I'm gonna get the information from you where you can kiss your daughter goodbye.
Head out to Tucson, Arizona, and you'll notice a few things. It's rather hot, it's rather dry, and much of the landscape is decidedly hard and flat. It's not ideal for farming, and perhaps not everyone's cup of tea as a tourism destination, but if you're looking to set up America's national air power reservoir, it's a pretty niche job. Arguably one of the most important strategic military locations in the world, you have absolutely come to the right place. Tucson is home to the Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, and by extension, the Boneyard, otherwise known as the 309th Aerospace Maintenance and Regeneration Group, or AMARG. Although rarely mentioned in textbooks, the 309th AMARG started out life as a simple depository for excess Department of Defense and Coast Guard aircraft, only to become a key component in not only virtually every major US military operation since World War II, but also in many major foreign military operations as well. From the fall of the Berlin Wall to the Vietnam War, the Boneyard was largely unseen and barely mentioned, but it acted as the linchpin that held these operations together. Imagine this, you're at your favourite coffee shop, sipping on some delicious coffee, doing a little bit of work on your laptop. Life is good, but did you know that using public Wi-Fi can be risky? Hackers could be lurking, waiting to steal your sensitive information. But don't worry, I've got the perfect solution to keep your internet activity safe, and that is Surfshark. Surfshark is a VPN that masks your online activities, keeping all of your important stuff private and secure. It's like having a superpower that protects you from prying eyes. It's super easy to use, just open the app, pick a server, and you are connected. Instant protection. And it's not just about security. Surfshark lets you virtually travel the world with a tap of your finger. Want to watch a show that's only available in another country? No problem. With Surfshark, you can access content from back home even when you're traveling. No more geo-blocks messing up your plans. And the best part, it won't break the bank. One subscription covers all of your devices. So whether you're on your phone, tablet, or laptop, Surfshark have you covered. So stay safe on public Wi-Fi, get past those annoying geo-blocks, and secure online life with Surfshark. Head to the link in the description below or go to surfshark.deals/mega and use the promo code MEGA for 4 months extra. Protect your privacy and enjoy the internet without limits thanks to Surfshark. And now back to today's episode. Hearing the term boneyard perhaps conjures up images of the Lion King's infamous elephant graveyard, but rest assured, a marg is anything but a lifeless, traumatizing stretch of land where hulking beasts head off to die. On the contrary, the boneyard is far more about keeping military hardware alive and ready for use, though it does also serve as the final resting place for obsolete vehicles. The facility, just a 20-minute drive from Tucson, is a remarkably efficient and incredibly well-organized arm of Air Force Material Command, tasked with not only storing aircraft in various stages of readiness, but likewise expected to transfer stored hardware back into service at very short notice. In addition to being a military hardware storage depot, the boneyard is also instrumental in providing hundreds of millions in parts annually to both American and Allied fleets. To put this all in a nutshell, the boneyard is the far less glorified logistics machine that keeps the US military running, as important, if not more important, than the widely publicized military operations themselves. Now, this probably isn't going to come as a shock, but the US has military hardware in excess. It's important to understand, though, that there is a big difference between having enormous fleets of cutting-edge hardware and being able to store, organize, and deploy that hardware effectively. After all, having expensive aircraft doesn't do much good if it takes a month to get that armada functional and in the air. It also doesn't do much good if what you need is a hammer and all you have in your toolbox is a screwdriver, which is to say, contrary to popular belief, military hardware is anything but a one-size-fits-all equation. Individual military hardware is designed with very specific use in mind, which is why military success is often defined by flexibility and adaptability rather than by who has the most guns. So the real question is, well, where do you keep your fleets? How much do you spend keeping them in a ready state? And most importantly, what do you do if the current wartime situation requires vehicles other than those you have standing by? All of which is why the US military keeps the boneyard running like a well-oiled machine. The 11 square kilometer facility has around 3,200 aircraft in various states of readiness, most being capable of being shipped out in a matter of days or sometimes even hours, depending on necessity, priority, and which department of the US is calling for it. Essential parts are available with equal levels of efficiency, and should a part be prioritized, it may be stripped, prepared, and shipped in as little as 3 days. Beyond the ready-to-go planes are an additional 6,300 engines for various other airborne vehicles. These parts are less likely to be needed at short notice, but are still available should an unexpected situation call for them. Now look, with all of this being said, the boneyard wasn't always the cutting-edge facility that it is today. It's taken decades for what was essentially a dumping ground of unneeded hardware to evolve into the military hardware backbone of the US. First of all, why put a military facility of enormous importance in the absolute middle of the scorching desert? Well, it turns out that scorching weather is exactly what is needed for sedentary military hardware, given that the biggest challenge of storing armored vehicles is naturally occurring corrosion and rust. The only reliable answer to rust is, as anyone that lives in a tropical climate will tell you, to move to a drier climate. This makes the Arizona desert amongst the driest regions in the US a really excellent location. Of course, there is far more to it than simply dumping multi-million-dollar hardware in the desert and leaving it to bake in the sun. A great deal of specialized effort goes into preparing an aircraft that sits for months or even years, enduring temperatures that exceed 101 Fahrenheit or 38 Celsius. And a little bit more on that later. Now, the other benefit of the Tucson desert is its naturally hard and inflexible landscape. In other circumstances, a great deal of time, effort, and money would have gone into paving the 11 square kilometer area. But in Tucson, the ground is already baked into a near cement-like state, allowing for the towing and maneuvering of even the heaviest vehicles without risk of wheels sinking into the earth. There are, on the other hand, more than a few drawbacks to engaging in hard manual labor in the desert, as the 700 stationed at the boneyard and over 10,000 at the Davis-Monthan Air Force Base will attest to. Dehydration is such a concern that a buddy system has been implemented whereby engineers involved in particularly stressful work are encouraged to look out for one another. If your buddy complains of stomach cramps, appears pale, or looks exhausted, it's time to step in and insist that they take a rehydration break, else risk landing up in the infirmary receiving emergency fluids. As Senior Airman Joshua A. McKay eloquently put it, once you feel thirsty in this heat, you are already dehydrated. You should be drinking water regardless of if you feel thirsty or not.
Get great value this end of financial year.
Amazon Echo Hub, only $329. A Zito 5-piece combo kit, just $299.
Where you find a competitor's lower price on the same stocked item, we'll beat it by 10%. Lowest prices are just the beginning.
Planning a holiday to Disneyland? Book tickets with the Klook app and experience a world of joy at Disney. With Klook, you can book any Disney park in the world, pay an AUD and get free cancellation. Download the Klook app today and keep looking for things to do.
despite all the drawbacks, Tucson was still the perfect storage location of military aircraft. In 1945, following World War II, a decision was made by San Antonio Air Technical Service Command to store unneeded Boeing B-29 Superfortresses and Douglas C-47 Skytrain aircraft in the Arizona desert. This was the first step that eventually turned the Boneyard into that cutting-edge, globe-spanning Air Force hub that it is today. At the time San Antonio Air Technical Service Command decided to store the unneeded aircraft at the Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, there wasn't much available in the way of specialized storage facilities. The idea of recycling or reprocessing military vehicles wasn't yet being properly explored, and following World War II, unneeded military hardware was often simply stashed away or dumped into a landfill. Thus, the newly founded 4105th Army Air Force Base Unit, a dedicated storage facility, was more of a makeshift necessity than anything really specialized. Following their establishment, a number of rapid changes occurred in the US military, the most prominent of which came in 1947. The United States Air Force was permanently separated from the United States Armed Forces, thereby creating an entirely independent entity. Needless to say, the much broader and far better funded USAF set about expanding its capabilities, and as the research and new production of aircraft ramped up, so too did the need for dedicated storage and maintenance. Now, the Boneyard underwent a frankly comical number of name and designation changes over the decades that followed, and we're not going to cover all of it would be really dull. The nutshell version is that the big development came in 1965, when the facility was renamed to the Military Aircraft Storage Disposition Center and tasked with processing aircraft for all of the United States Armed Forces, not just the Air Force. The US Navy had previously operated the dedicated Naval Air Station Litchfield Park on behalf of the Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard, but these facilities were folded into the rapidly expanding depot at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. Over 500 aircraft were transported across Arizona, and the Naval Air Station shut down permanently in 1968. The Boneyard went through various additional stages of evolution over the years, adapting to the needs of the military as they arose, until finally in 2007 the Aerospace Maintenance and Regeneration Center was combined with the 309th Maintenance Wing, effectively creating a single, centralized facility that dealt with the storage and maintenance of aircraft on behalf of all arms of the US government, as well as extending those services to allied nations. US departments that rely on this facility today include the National Museum of the US Air Force, NASA, the Department of Agriculture, the National Science Foundation, and even the Smithsonian Institute. And side note here, the exterior Smithsonian scenes in Transformers Revenge of the Fallen were actually shot at the Boneyard. Fun fact. As it stands today, AMAG is widely recognized as amongst the most strategically important military facilities in the world. Not only does this single location keep a huge percentage of the world's aircraft operational, it's also home to some of the most talented military engineers alive. According to the commander of the Boneyard, Colonel Robert S. Leopard Jr., quoting here, "The experience of our workforce is beyond that of almost any other maintenance group commanders in the entire Air Force. In the active duty force, most maintainers work on, at most, 2 aircraft. But my crews work on 9 different airplanes in a day and take parts off 6 or 7 different kinds of aircraft. Most of my people have 20 to 40 years of experience in aircraft maintenance. Most maintenance group commanders would kill for 5 years average experience." That being said, just what exactly goes into storing and maintaining multi-million-dollar aircraft? Well, let's look at that now, shall we? Aircraft arriving at the Boneyard are put into storage categories depending on the broader needs of the military. The categories are Type 1000, long-term storage, Type 2000, parts reclamation, Type 3000, flying hold, and Type 4000, in excess of DoD needs. Now, regardless of the type of storage, it is no small task preparing an aircraft for hibernation. On average, it's going to take Boneyard engineers and mechanics 50 hours of manual labor before any hardware can reliably be put out into the sun. Helicopters take longer, given that special treatment must be provided for the rotary blades. Particularly big aircraft, such as the hulking B-52, may take up to 300 hours before they're greenlit for stashing. Upon arrival at the Boneyard, the hardware is accepted by a team at the receiving branch. Each item comes with documentation listing any maintenance received since original construction, ensuring that proper treatment is provided. Planes are washed, with special attention paid to anything that serves in a tropical climate. The fuel is flushed, corrosive chemicals are drained, and any explosive elements are removed, such as ejector seat components. Clocks and data plates are also removed, though this isn't for safety, but rather due to the Boneyard having an ongoing problem with memento hunters. Visitors often steal clocks and data plates due to an enthusiastic collector's market for these items in particular. This, of course, isn't to say that security at the Boneyard is lackluster. There's a quick divergence legend, security at the facility has actually been stepped up in recent years due to a dramatic increase in the value of F-14 Tomcat parts on the black market. F-14 parts are highly sought after by the Iranian Air Force. This following a sale by the US of 79 F-14s to Iran in the late 70s. Later, the Islamic Revolution turned relations between the two nations sour, and the US put a restriction on the sale of F-14 parts to Iran in hopes that the sold fleet would remain grounded. As such, countless shady arms dealers have sprung up ready to pay a small fortune for anything that will help keep Iran's aging F-14s operational. Steps have since been taken to counter the problem, including the destruction of surplus F-14s at the boneyard, as well as a tightening of security across the board. Alright, so let's get back to the receiving branch. After aircraft are processed, they're put into the specific category of specialized storage. Type 1000 storage means that the aircraft is maintained in good condition, given that it will probably fly again at some point. The parts in Type 1000 storage are typically available for salvage, though only in the case of priority and only if strict permissions are granted. About 10% of aircraft at the boneyard are in inviolate 1000 storage, and maintaining them is a priority. All Type 1000 aircraft can be rapidly resurrected back into service, though the resurrection won't be as fast as Type 3000 storage. Type 2000 aircraft are similarly stored to Type 1000, but with hardware in this category expressly greenlit for part reclamation. Either way, be an aircraft destined for 1000 or 2000 storage, the vehicle will undergo a spray-lat treatment before being put out into the scorching desert sun. Spray-lat refers to the process of applying a $550 per 5-gallon or 19-litre latex that's applied as a cocoon to the exterior of the aircraft. An interior black layer and exterior white layer are used. All gaps, holes and breaches are carefully covered, preventing the creep of moisture, sand or dirt. Special attention is paid to vulnerable exterior moving parts, as well as providing protection from moisture. The latex layers also ensure that no matter how hot it gets in the interior of the aircraft, it never exceeds 15 degrees of ambient temperature. Type 3000 storage is for aircraft that are likely to be called back into duty in the near future. It's these vehicles that occupy much of the core activity at the boneyard, given that 24-hour care must be provided to avoid the complex machinery slipping into a state of stagnation. The engines are run every 30 days, internal fluids are serviced regularly, and the aircraft are even manually towed for short distances to ensure that floating bearings remain lubricated. An aircraft in Type 3000 storage can be called back into active duty in a matter of days or sometimes even hours, depending on circumstances. And lastly, Type 4000 storage is for aircraft that are not presently needed, are unlikely to be needed again in the future, and are otherwise considered entirely unnecessary.
There is always more to discover. Whichever covered destinations you choose to explore, we're here to help protect you. Helping travellers is what we do. Cover more. Travel insurance that's always by your side.
Anaconda's end of financial year sale is on now with half price Pen Squall combo now $149.99 plus up to 40% off Shimano combos. Play more and pay less with our 10% price beat guarantee. Anaconda!
Type 4000 vehicles are stripped down, the engines are stored separately, and valuable parts are categorized and made available to both local and allied fleets. Once all valuable parts and useful materials are harvested, whatever remains is sent to the scrapping department. And that indeed brings us to the scrapping department of the boneyard, the final resting place of obsolete military hardware. The demil section, or demilitarization section, is tasked with the deconstruction of the remains of aircraft as much as possible, then cutting the hollow shell into more manageable pieces. Whatever can't be melted down and recycled is officially put to rest for good in the scrapyard. The 578 Disposal Squadron is first up in the lengthy scrapping process, tasked with removing hazardous materials such as asbestos, beryllium, anything radioactive, lead, and depleted uranium. Depleted uranium was used in the armor of the Fairchild Republic A-10 Thunderbolt II, and in the armor of the C-130 Hercules, if you are curious about what that's used for. Following the removal of hazardous materials, a recently defunct unit, the Strategic Material Recovery and Reuse Program, previously oversaw the separation of potentially sellable metals like titanium for allied nations. Defense Logistics has since discontinued that service due to labor costs, and now any nation interested in the scrap is responsible for reclaiming it on their own time. It's worth noting that rather admirably, if at any stage of scrapping, boneyard teams find anything interesting, such as unique nose art or any other notable features worth preserving, they contact the National Museum of the US Air Force before disposing of the vehicle entirely. The Boneyard has played a role in a frankly dizzying number of strategic military operations over the years, including the Berlin Airlift, the Korean War, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Vietnam War, Operation Desert Storm, the Bosnian War, Operations Iraqi and Enduring Freedom, as well as the ongoing global war on terror. There is so much that it would require an unrealistically long video to list everything, so here's a really brief summary of some of the prominent operations that relied on the Boneyard in some form or another. In 1948, as the Cold War blossomed to occupy the chaos left by World War II, the Soviet Union blocked all road, rail, and canal traffic in and out of Western-controlled Berlin. In response, the strategic Berlin Airlift was launched, prompting Great Britain and America to airdrop essential supplies to stranded civilians. Some 250,000 flights were made, many of them in C-47 cargo planes stored at the Boneyard. With the help of these rapidly deployed planes, the target amount of supplies delivered was often doubled, ultimately putting an end to what could have otherwise been a humanitarian disaster. In the 1950s, the Boneyard played a pivotal role in several major operations as well, primarily in support of the Korean War. Several hundred B-29 bombers stored after World War II were promptly reconditioned and redeployed for missions in North Korea. In that same period, a separate 80 B-29s were provided to the United Kingdom to provide the country with long-range attack capabilities prior to the development and deployment of the country's own English electric Canberra. In the 70s, following the Vietnam War, the Boneyard reached its peak of storage capability, landing up as the designated depot for many of the aircraft recalled from duty. At that time, a total of 6,080 aircraft were overseen by a comparatively small crew working in the Boneyard. Towards the end of the 70s, a landmark program kicked off at the Boneyard, still operational to this day. It involved a number of aircraft being pulled from storage and experimentally converted into unmanned drones. And yes, drones have existed since the late 1970s. To date, over 1,000 aircraft at the Boneyard, including F-102 Delta Daggers, F-100 Super Sabres, F-106 Delta Darts, F-4 Phantom IIs, and F-16 Fighting Falcons, have made the conversion to unmanned drone status via specialized Boneyard engineers. The 80s saw the Boneyard, the Aerospace Maintenance and Regeneration Center at that time, take on the additional task of dismantling and repurposing intercontinental ballistic missiles to instead be used in the launching of satellites. Following this, in the 90s, the facility played a key role in coordinating the US in compliance with the groundbreaking Measures for the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, or START 1. The bilateral agreement signed by the US and Russia saw both nations agree to vastly reduce the quantity of offensive military items held by each nation. The Boneyard oversaw the dismantling of 365 Boeing B-52 Stratofortress bombers, all under the careful watch of Russia via satellites and via first-person inspections. In 2012, the Boneyard ramped up to support the military operations in Iraq. This required the repurposing of 10,000 parts in support of various fleets, most prominently F-15s, B-1Bs, F-16s, C-5s, and C-135s. The entire operation had a value of around $472 million. It was reported in 2023 that in providing support for the conflict in Ukraine, that the facility reclaimed and processed around 7,000 parts, the value of which exceeded $250 million. The facility itself is valued at around $34 billion today, making it among the most valuable military strategic locations in the world. No doubt, the Boneyard will continue to support Ukraine, no matter when or how the war finally comes to a conclusion.
Need something cut? That's it?
fashion designer.
My name is Tim Dodd. I'm from the United States, and I've been chosen as a crew member for Dear Moon.
Meet Meade McCormick. She's a filmmaker in Los Angeles and one of the top 100 finalists for the Mars One mission.
There's a lot of video things that I want to do that can help share the experience with the general public.
But I'm asking for an opportunity to tell the story of Dear Moon from a first-person perspective. I've always looked up to space. As a young child, I wanted to become an astronaut.
Everybody thought that the idea was crazy, and I sincerely did not think that it was a crazy idea.
My soul is begging for this. It needs this.
And of course the Mars One crashed and burned spectacularly, achieving nothing. Yeah, taking gazillions of dollars of supporters' money with it. And if you're thinking, well, SpaceX is a reputable space company, they're going to do much better. Really, the space company that thought their rocket was just going to fly around the moon, only to work out while carrying zero cargo that it runs out of fuel in low Earth orbit. Well, that's just for starters. Then just miraculously popping solar panels out of nowhere.
Hi.
The crew will spend a week in space.
Yet the great thing about vaporware is you're just really not constrained by the laws of physics.
What will they feel when they see the moon? When they see Earth in full view?
And just to show how half-assed all of this is, that's the view you would get if you were coming over the North Pole of the moon. You know that because you can see the North Pole on the Earth. But that's not the way you would orbit the moon in the Dear Moon mission. You would be on an east-west or west-east type trajectory. So the moonrise would look like this. Not like this. You know, it's not just the whole mission plan was half-assed, the computer graphics to go with it were as well. Now it turns out the eccentric billionaire who was financing the Dear Moon mission has given up on it completely. Which begs the question, if SpaceX has been ditched merely for a contract to fly around the moon, how far away are they from actually landing on it, as they were meant to be doing about 3 months ago now? This is the Gantt chart that accompanied SpaceX's proposal for the human landing system, basically the thing that takes people from lunar orbit and lands them on the moon, for which they got some $3 billion of taxpayer money. You know, of all the complicated stuff that you can do in space, flying around the moon is one of the simplest ones. It's Apollo-era stuff, specifically Apollo 8. You literally just go up and come down again. Except you've got to time it for when the moon is there. So timing matters, and you only spend about an hour or so around the moon, half of which you're looking at the unlit portion of the moon. And then you're on your way back. Now, when Apollo was doing this, it was actually a fairly ballsy thing, because the maths had to mostly be done by hand.
We here on the ground have done all we can in the way of computations. It's up to the crew now. They're on their own.
Maybe a reminder of the advanced computer graphics they had access to back then.
That will place his spacecraft exactly in the same orbit with Gemini 7.
Yep.
And if you screwed it up, you would very quickly get to the point where there was no way that the humans would get back alive. There was some real skin in the game on these things. Now with modern computers and over 50 years experience, not so tense. But Dear Moon is basically Apollo 8. Thing is, Starship at this moment isn't even at Apollo 4. Apollo 4, which successfully tested the heavy launch vehicle, successfully tested the second stage, successfully tested the third stage, successfully tested the command module, successfully refired it, successfully tested the heat shield at orbital re-entry speeds, all on its maiden flight, which was somewhat before Elon Musk was even born. Starship Test 1 failed to make a suborbital trajectory and blew up. Starship 2 failed to make an even shorter suborbital trajectory and blew up twice. Starship Test 3 managed to successfully inject an out-of-control upper stage into a suborbital trajectory before the lower stage blew up and the upper stage re-entered the atmosphere in an uncontrolled fashion and burned up. Starship 4, well, that was the first one with elements of success. I mean, we're not talking like the successes you could have in 1967 or anything, in that the booster didn't blow up before it made a soft landing in the ocean. and the upper stage partially melted before also making a soft landing. And while all the SpaceX fans were dancing a happy jig about this, even the most optimistic appraisal of their progress means they haven't even gotten to the first goal on this Gantt chart, and honestly might be dead in the water in more than a literal sense. You see, Musk already says that Starship can only take possibly some 50 tons to low Earth orbit.
We're aiming for, currently Flight 3 would be around 40 or 50 tons to orbit.
Then given Musk's propensity for overstatement, it's probably nowhere near that. In that the only times we've actually seen it inside, it's completely devoid of cargo. Thus far, Starship has only ever launched an empty tube into space. And basically, if the heat shield you have to add to make this thing survive re-entry outstrips the weight of your cargo to low Earth orbit, congrats, you've made a pointless vehicle. But even with Musk's optimistic appraisal of 50 tons, well, with the originally stated 100-ton cargo to low Earth orbit, the Government Accountability Office reckoned you would need the best part of 20 refueling flights for a lunar mission. So with 50 tons, it would be near 40. And with an even lesser cargo than that, it'll be many more. So fine, Musk says they're going to redesign the rocket to make it bigger.
So the current design, Starship 2 will be over 100 tons, and then Starship 3 will be over 200 tons.
With Starship version 2 and 3, which appear nowhere on this Gantt chart whatsoever. But fine, you redesign it to make it slightly longer. But one can't help think that if they could solve problems like this some 50 years ago with slide rules, why did SpaceX have to blow up or melt some 4 rockets to figure this out? And having not even achieved Apollo 4, and now they've just had their Apollo 8 moment cancelled. Because they are comically far from making this happen. Look, I said way back in one of my SpaceX Busted videos that Starship is basically a larger version of the shuttle with a more sensible stacking arrangement. And I'm not so sure I fancy the chances of those spindly little flaps for actually surviving re-entry.
Camera view is looking right at one of the forward flaps. And we're strategically putting some cameras around the vehicle.
Which means Musk will shortly have another great idea of maybe some fixed plate type heat shield. And another brilliant new idea that no one's ever thought of. Hey, what if we actually just say, put an undercarriage on this and maybe land it on a runway or something? Then we wouldn't have to worry about reigniting the engine. And we could vent all of the tanks such that if we land, there is no chance of an explosion. You will say, hey look, this is just simple and it works. And it's way more profound than people think it is. And the Elon Musk fans will be like... At which point, they will have the same problem as the shuttle, but on steroids. You see, if the heat tiles come off, you lose the vehicle, and the space shuttle, the underlying frame was relatively flexible compared to the delicate, fragile, and inflexible heat tiles, which is why the shuttle got the nickname of the Flying Brickyard. And if you thought the underlying frame of the shuttle was flexible, this thing is a giant floppy tube, which has apparently one span across it to try and stiffen up the tube. Hey, here's an idea. Why not move that stiffening brace to the bottom of the tube and make it into a sort of wing-type structure? So basically, between flights, they will have to re-inspect the heat shield every time, just like they did with the shuttle. And this alone kills the rapid reuse thing. Or you can just skip the inspections and lose a vehicle every time a tile or so falls off, killing the economics of reusability. And that's assuming there is actually any financial benefit to this reusability at all. Incidentally, I'd always assumed that the interior of a Starship would be pressurized, basically use gas pressure to rigidify the vehicle. Right, I don't know if this will work, so let's pressurize it. Yeah. There you go. So it's now actually hard to push because it's pressurized, and if I take the pressure off, which is done like this, right, that's soft to push Yeah. Now, it all goes on the pressure differential, of course, so, having a vacuum outside and even a partial pressure inside will give you a lot of structural rigidity on a can like this. But that, of course, would mean that you would have to do a good enough job in welding all this together that it would be airtight. And it looks like SpaceX didn't have the faith that they could do this, so they actually had giant holes in the vehicle to let the air out. Incidentally, if it did vent all of the atmosphere out fairly slowly whilst in space, then re-entered the atmosphere, such that it's a vacuum on the inside of the can and atmospheric pressure on the outside, this wouldn't go so well either. Sweet, so he's now hooked up to the vacuum system, and as you can see, there is 1 atmosphere of pressure in there at the moment. So let's start this up. Oh, wow! Wow! I only took 1/10 of an atmosphere out, and look what happened. That's what a reduction of 1/10 of an atmosphere did, even though it took up to 3 bars of pressure. And let's just do this for good measure. Oh, no, that's half an atmosphere of pressure. That's basically all of it. Anyway, looks like they had big holes in the side of the Starship to vent all of the air out and let the atmosphere back in when it was re-entering. This means that your Starship now basically has no gas pressure inside of it to rigidify it. So it has to be structurally braced, which of course adds weight. And not having a pressurized interior means this really isn't that suitable for humans. Well, maybe if Dim Todd was happy to wear the exact same spacesuit for a week on the Dear Moon mission. With a supersized diaper. Dim, personal log, stardate, day 4.
20 minutes, we'll see the pilgrim.
White thing passed outside the window today. No one cared. I no longer fear hell after 4 days in the same diaper. I see my emotions reflected in the dead eyes of my crewmates.
Don't do that. No, come on. Oh, man.
They say that death is certain due to all the tiles that fell off during launch, but somehow it's just lost its sting.
Rate up, adrenaline up, stomach muscle spasming. Overbeck's in distress. Look at these methane levels.
My heart warms that Musk is already preparing to talk to tell how a burning star full of social media influences is a great success for SpaceX.
Congratulations, guys. You did that. That's insane. I mean, it looks like CGI. It's hard to believe that is unfiltered video. That's just the actual what the camera saw. No filters, no nothing. That's actually what the camera saw, which is insane. You're doing incredible work that I think almost no one thought would actually happen. So it's wild that this
oh, how I love Elon from the bottom of my poop-filled diaper. And I can already see the Musk fans piling up in the comments right now saying, "Ha! Joke's on you! This fantasy is completely unrealistic. Starship will never be human-rated because engine reliability issues and landing reliability issues are... And, no emergency abort system." Incidentally, 2 weeks of pooping in a diaper is not far off what the early Gemini missions did. Because they wanted an endurance mission to show that people could actually survive in space long enough to get to the moon and come back. So they had 2 people sitting in a crazy small Gemini capsule, during which time they came to the conclusion that wearing spacesuits for an extended period of time was completely impractical.
Frank, we're moving right along in this suit situation. I would like to get some more specific comments from you at this time.
Roger, there's no question in our minds the only way to fight these things is without pressure suits.
And they could just about take those pressure suits off in the tiny pressurized Gemini capsule. Something you wouldn't be able to do in an unpressurized cabin. Anyway, so they're going to need to do as many checks on this thing as they did on the shuttle's heat shield. So let's see, before it leaves orbit, let's be super optimistic and say it needs 10 refueling flights at, say, 100 tons apiece. And they're going to launch them at the amazingly fast rate of about 1 per week. That's about 3 times quicker than SpaceX has ever reused a rocket. So that's like 2 months. But whatever, let's say it's super optimistic and it's only 1 month. So, Tim's Typer is going to be fully overloaded before they even leave low Earth orbit. But don't worry, Tim, only a week or so more to go and we'll get you right out of that diaper. You see, SpaceX said it would be building a human landing system, that's this bit in the Apollo era tech, for about $3 billion. That's basically what Apollo 11 did. And thus far, they've burnt through 2/3 of the taxpayer cash, and now they've got to the point when they've just had their merely flying around the moon mission cancelled. America's aspirations of relanding people on the moon, which is kind of a dumb goal. You know, human missions typically end up being about 99% about giving the humans enough oxygen to breathe such that they don't die of asphyxiation, or enough water to drink such that they don't die of dehydration, or food to eat such that they don't die of starvation. Well, with food, water and oxygen being in pretty short supply in space. Rovers doing science merely just need power to do their science. But whatever, there is a romance about people in space. And for this romance, Musk is the manipulative X. He promises everything, if only you will give him one last chance.
So we want to get Mars to be a self-sustaining civilization as quickly as possible. And I think this can be done in around 20 years.
Oh, and boy, are there a lot of easily manipulated, emotionally dependent girlfriends. Musk will be almost solely responsible for the castration of America's human spaceflight aspirations. And guaranteed, when that happens, his girlfriends will be out there in force, making excuses about how it was all their fault for not believing in him enough. So why will it end up castrating the American human space program? Because he promised the Earth, and gullible saps believed him. They worshipped him. You know, because manipulative X was telling them exactly what they wanted to hear.
In order to build a city on Mars, we'll need to be kind of in the million-ton to orbit range.
Ready to leave?
So it's going to end up flying several times a day from many different locations in the world.
What's going on? Look at my ears.
And I think there's a pretty good chance that it does Earth-to-Earth transport as well.
I am particularly excited about that capability.
Hello, what's going on?
I can visit my customers overseas in Dubai, in Riyadh, in London, and get home in time to make dinner.
Hello, what's going on? Rocket, that's what I thought. Oh, it's SpaceX!
Because the fastest way to get from one place to another on Earth is, to get from here to the other side of Earth is an intercontinental ballistic missile. But just make sure you delete the nuke and add the landing part.
In reality, this is comically delusional bullshit. Such that you would have to be a complete and utter moron to believe any of this.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
Time to share our latest Starship Supercut. We've taken Elon's 2024 presentation, cut down the repetition and unnecessary bits, and served it up right here as a neat bonus video. There was a load of great stuff in this, so if you missed it, watched only some of it, or just want a fun refresh mixed with wonderful music, you are going to love this.
Is the overall sort of path to making life multiplanetary. Starship is the first design of a rocket that is actually capable of making life multiplanetary. Before this has had the potential to extend life to another planet. Because this is the first time in Earth's 4.5 billion year history that it's been possible to extend life or consciousness beyond Earth. The key thing is that we need enough people and enough tonnage on Mars such that Mars can survive and continue consciousness, even if something would happen to Earth.
For too long, humanity has existed within dysfunctional and polluted cities that ignore nature. Now, A revolution in civilization is taking place.
Then on Mars, in the beginning, we would simply reuse the ship materials. So most of the ships wouldn't come back, but then over time, you'd want to bring the ships back so you could reuse them.
Imagine a traditional city and consolidating its footprint.
What if we removed cars? What if we got rid of streets? What if we innovated in the public space?
Designing to protect and enhance nature. The line will be home to 9 million residents.
Mining in general, ice mining, propellant production, long-duration life support.
Energy and water supplies are 100% renewable. The line is designed as a series of unique communities, offering a wealth of amenities. And we are designing it to provide a healthier, more sustainable quality of life. The line's communities are organized in 3 dimensions.
While it sounds like something out of a science fiction novel, the Saudi Arabian government is determined to have this city become a reality by the year 2025.
For a self-sustaining city is about 1 million and several million tons of cargo, which we can do, and we can do this in 20 years. Yes, we're going to Mars. Going beyond Mars, we'll go to Ceres, we'll go to the moons of Jupiter, and sort of, planet and moon hop all the way out of the solar system.
Look, Neon was a comically stupid idea to build a linear modern city in the desert, and it recently got scaled back from being 100 miles long to being like 1 mile long. That is, the line became the dot. The mere cost for building a city in the desert was over $1 trillion. And Musk wants to do the exact same thing, build a city for 1 million people, but not in the desert, but on Mars. And when they go to Mars, this is all going to ramp up by orders of magnitude.
You couldn't have said it better, Kate. And the moon is just the proving ground. It's just the start. When the time comes to make the leap to Mars, everything ramps up by orders of magnitude.
Really? With whose money? All of this was only thus far possible because of government cash. And usually, the government is not going to give SpaceX a budget of $1 trillion for basically nothing. You can't build a city in the desert with that sort of cash. Why on earth would you believe a bullshit merchant who says he's going to build that exact same city, but on Mars?
SpaceX founder Elon Musk tweeted out Wednesday that he's hoping to land one of his capsules on the surface of Mars in May of 2018.
That's not that far away.
No.
Big announcement that he's got set for next month, I believe. The Red Dragon spacecraft to go unmanned to Mars also in 2018.
Spoiler, SpaceX has never made anything that has left low Earth orbit, let alone made it to Mars.
Oh, and we're going to try to send something to Mars on every Mars rendezvous from here on out. So Dragon 2, which is a propulsive lander, we plan to send to Mars in a couple years, and then do probably another Dragon mission in 2020. In fact, we want to establish a steady cadence that there's always a flight leaving, like it's a train leaving the station. With every Mars rendezvous, we will be sending at least a Dragon to Mars. So then in 2024, we want to try to fly 4 ships. 2 of which would be crewed, and 2 of which two cargo and two crew.
Meanwhile, in 2024, they were having their mission to merely fly around the moon cancelled.
The goal of these initial missions is to find the best source of water. That's for the first mission, and then the second mission, the goal is to build the propellant plant.
And the person who created an entire rocket company in less than 10 years, will get us to Mars by 2027.
In 2017, when Elon first proposed this huge undertaking, his goal was to get the first boots on the ground on Mars by 2022. Since then, Elon has pulled back to a more realistic 2024 deadline to reach the red planet.
Wow, all right, so Musk said that SpaceX's long-term goal is to colonize Mars by the 2020s.
Yeah, this is utterly delusional stuff to the point where it makes the Hyperloop seem like a sane and well thought out idea. You know, for those who don't know, SpaceX had a competition outside SpaceX headquarters where Musk talked in front of a SpaceX Hyperloop tube made by SpaceX engineers.
But it's really not that hard.
It still sounds pretty complicated, Elon.
It's like a tube with an air hockey table. It's really, I swear it's not that hard.
Meanwhile, the Musk fan club is convinced that the guy who can't even build a 1 kilometer long Hyperloop is going to take humanity to the entire solar system.
And then once we go beyond Mars, there's some asteroids like Ceres, some of the moons of Jupiter. Starship would ultimately be capable of reaching anywhere in the solar system.
Oh no, forget the 1 kilometer one outside SpaceX headquarters. He was going to build one from DC to Baltimore. Sorry, what's that? That never happened either? Huh. If only there was some sort of explanation for all of this.
I'm a common, or maybe I'm a god, zooming around the planet in my hyperlooping pod.
But hell, let's just say they can get to the moon, where the space cadets think that it's going to be like this.
Moon's low gravity. These efforts are ensuring that the suit is ready for extensive scientific research during the first mission to the lunar South Pole.
Really, the extensive scientific research of hitting a rock with a hammer. I mean, what exact scientific research do you think they're going to do on the moon that actually requires a human to be there? I mean, the tears of delusionality here. I mean, let's just give Musk that he can get a human to Mars for a few $100,000.
And if we can get the cost of moving to Mars to be roughly equivalent to a median house price in the US, which is around $200,000.
Tough call, seeing as they currently charge about 100 times that amount to merely go to low Earth orbit. But fine, whatever. Bus ticket to go to Mars is going to be a few $100,000. What's the price of transporting someone's home to live there? You know, if the construction price of a house on Earth is a few $100,000, what's it going to be on Mars? And for complete perspective, remember how I said human missions were 99% about just keeping the people alive? NEOM didn't have to worry about any of that. The air, the water, and the food were essentially free. And they didn't have to poop in diapers the whole time. And it was still too expensive. And SpaceX say with a straight face that they're going to do that exact same thing on Mars, which will be likely 1,000,000 times more expensive. Look, Musk's rocket can't even make orbit at the moment, let alone take cargo to orbit, let alone do anything with that cargo. He has zero chance of getting anything to Mars, let alone building a city there. Hell, forget Mars. Musk couldn't build a city here on Earth. What on earth makes you think that he could do it on Mars? Nah, Musk's problems are a little more down to earth, you know, like getting sued for insider trading and being investigated by the Securities Exchange Commission over a full self-driving they claimed worked better than a human in 2016. And is currently getting sued in California, where it's alleged that Tesla vehicles could not at the time of those advertisements and cannot now operate as autonomous vehicles. Oh, and sure, the guy who can't make a functioning windscreen wiper.
At this point, I think I know more about manufacturing than anyone currently alive on Earth.
On their best product ever, the Cybertruck.
I think it's our best product.
Yeah, sure. That guy is going to be landing people on Mars in the next 6 months. And if you've gotten this far and you're thinking, holy crap, it's exhausting keeping up with this guy's bullshit, believe me, it hurts making videos where everyone from space cadets to NASA believe in obvious bullshit notion. Look, being a scientist, I'm a pretty big supporter of science, but putting men on the moon or Mars is just a needlessly expensive and dangerous way of doing science. But for those for whom this is an emotional argument, I'll put it in terms you can understand. SpaceX just lost America the moon, and all it cost was the best part of $5 billion of taxpayer money.
Scale that no company has ever achieved in the history of humanity.
Got everything?
How do I bring up consent?
Do I have to ask every time?
Is it too late to talk about it? If we don't know the answers, how will our kids? Check your understanding at consent.gov.au. Authorised by the Australian Government, Canberra.
After a stressful meeting with ASUS at the end of Computex, I wanted to end the show on a high note by visiting one of the most creative spaces we know from the industry, Inwin's Design Center, where the company has been credited with popularizing and bringing tempered glass to PC
Let
cases.
the record show, I totally agree with Robert De Niro. I am one of those people that suffer from Trump derangement syndrome. I think he is a threat to democracy.
Really?
I think that he led an attempted coup of this country. You know, he said he wanted to suspend the Constitution to overthrow the results of an election. At the least, that's just not a patriotic thing to say.
I don't believe that.
He absolutely said that on
I will
Truth
look
Social.
that up.
He did.
He wanted to suspend the Constitution.
He said we should suspend the Constitution to overthrow the results of an election. He said it on Truth Social, then said he didn't say it. So I read Project 25. I'm one of those guys that's like, I don't know if he will necessarily leave. I hope he does.
This is so tiresome. It's so tiresome when they say Trump will never leave if he's... No, actually, the only way he'll leave is if he's president, ironically. Because then he'll have served 2 terms and he'll be done.
Let the record show, I totally agree with Robert De Niro. I am one of those people that suffer from Trump derangement syndrome. I think he is a threat to democracy.
Really?
I think that he led an attempted coup of this country. You know, he said he wanted to suspend the Constitution to overthrow the results of an election. At the least, that's just not a patriotic thing to say.
I don't believe that.
He absolutely said that on
I will
Truth
look
Social.
that up.
He did.
He wanted to suspend the Constitution.
He said we should suspend the Constitution to overthrow the results of an election. He said it on Truth Social, then said he didn't say it. So I read Project 25. I'm one of those guys that's like, I don't know if he will necessarily leave. I hope he does.
Oh, this is so tiresome. It's so tiresome when they say Trump will never leave if he's...
Brian.
Byron.
Do you have much experience working in deliveries?
Yes, I have lots of experience.
On your CV, we've got a few references. Do you mind if I give them a call?
Sure.
Hello, Tech Town. Alan speaking.
Hi there, it's Rowan here from Tech Town. Look, I have a candidate here for an interview called Brian who used to work for you. I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about him.
Byron, I can confirm, was a great employee. He was very professional, loved having him.
It was that good, huh?
Yeah, probably the best delivery guy on the planet, nay, the universe.
I must say that is some particularly high praise. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay.
Farewell. I am pleased to say that phone call went quite well for you. I'm happy to give you the job.
Thanks.
I'll go talk to Ree about getting you a new uniform.
Oh, that's all good. I'll just use my old one.
It's Byron! Where have you been? I thought you were dead! Brian.
Byron.
Do you have much experience working in deliveries?
Yes, I have lots of experience.
On your CV, we've got a few references. Do you mind if I give them a call?
Sure.
Hello. I'll leave you to it. Quite often I punch people for no good reason, but that seems a bit harsh with you. Oh, well, thank you very much. I wonder if we meant to leave that shotgun. They don't seem to want to talk. Never find anything in here, but you never know. Today might be the day. I'm quite pleased in a way that I've started and it's nighttime. Oh, there's a Glock. Something. Yeah, I'm quite pleased it's nighttime right now because we can get it out of the way, you know, get it out of the way while it doesn't really matter, and then we'll have, like, glorious sunshine. Magnum. Swagnum, baby. That doesn't spawn there. Crappy shots. I'd quite like to get out of Pobezno, I think. I'd quite like to get out. Put that on double shot. Yeah, the dark blue temperature is not ideal, but as we're sprinting, it's okay. I'm going to have to go and cook these chickens, but I'm going to loot the military base first. What? Why was that not... Why was that not a stealth attack, exactly? I don't understand how that wasn't a stealth attack. The knife is badly damaged. It was worn about 10 seconds ago. That is so stupid. They get damaged so quick. It's stupid. Like, pick up a pristine knife. Kill 10 zombies. Need a new knife. Me dead. Come on. Ooh. A baby AK here. That's a good find, isn't it? What the shit? This is an official server, mind you, guys. Official server and a baby AK here with a mag. 2 baby AKs. Right. There is a stream this way. There's a well very close by as well, but I need to wash my hands, I guess, and then I can eat the tuna, and that might delay me needing a fire, but I suppose I ought to just... do you know what? We've got... There's a cow there. We could solve all of our food worries in seconds. Oh. The zombies are trying to do it for me. No. I can't keep using that, it's going to get ruined, isn't it? Yes. Right, there's a little pond over this way. I'm going to wash my hands, then we'll cook in whatever the nearest house is. Right, that poor cow's still getting it. So there are more houses to the left, but I'm going to ignore those and I'm going to follow the road in the vain hope that there's a convoy up there. Because a convoy can spawn on this road. I think the convoy might be there. Or is it? It might not be. It might not be. I might be getting overexcited over nothing. The convoy's there! Wow. There's zombies as well. There's going to be a gun. It's going to be a big boy. What kind of hearing have you got?
Get a head start on leveling up with an accessory that boosts your experience points. Final Fantasy XIV Online Dawn Trail. Pre-order now.
The Mutiny Club. We were the hottest pleasure palace in Miami. Over time, I will come to learn the hard Miami lesson. Every pleasure has a price.
Hearing of a bat. Here it comes. Oh, look, did you see that? That was a butt stop. Oh, come on. I can smell guns. I can smell them. There's a foul. No bastard mag. No bastard mag once more. Ooh, a scope for the foul. Which will also go... Oh, there's another gun. Is that a UMP? It's a Bison, isn't it? It's a Bison. What kind of bastard is in a tank with a Bison? You know, like... Why? Where's your damn... Oh, NVGs. Okay, at least they could see in the dark. So far, so good. We've got a foul, we've got NVGs, and we've still got 3 or 4 Trekkie trucks to go. Gloves. 75 round drum mag for an AK. As good as that is, the AKM actually only spawns in the gas, so it's almost like redundant, unfortunately. Would really like to find one more gun. One more big boy gun. The DMR would be good. There's a gun there, but it looks shit. It's an all-gay one. Let's take that and think about what we've done. Let's go this way a little. I don't know how I'm going to... I think maybe I'm going to drop the shotgun. All good finds, right? I don't mind the all-gay one. I've come round to it a little bit after playing all the Battle Royale. It's not great, but it's alright. On our search for SV98s, we could easily find mags for that, so I feel like we should keep it for now. How do I fit that in? I think I'm going to have to leave the drum mag. So ordinarily now, what I would be doing is going to the castle to try and find sniper rifles and stuff, but I haven't got space. I haven't got space for sniper rifles. I think I'm going to go to the tents that are the way we're running right now, pretty much. And then we're going to have to go off looking for military. You know, we've got some good shit here. We can focus on finding our SV98. We can use FAL as the mid-range to close range and an SV98 for long. Sounds like we'd be living the dream to me. That zombie's moving. And it's kind of aggroed as well. That zombie's been trapped up there, I think. It's got its arms out. It looks like it's been aggroed. It's a mushroom down there. I think there's players here. I think we're going to struggle to loot this and not get ourselves shot. How is that nerd me? I tried to kill it in a fairly well hidden way. Dead zombie in there, and a shotgun too. Somebody's there then. Right, this is where I wanted to be. I don't know if they're still here or what, but it feels like there's someone still here. Tank that round. I thought it was a headshot. It must have dipped a touch, maybe. I don't know. So they were still in there when the zombie was aggroed. They were still in there. Oh, no way. That was unlucky. That was unlucky. I think they're uncon. I don't think they're down. I think they're only uncon. I'm about to die pushing here. I'm pretty sure I'm going to die. That's not the same one. There's two. There was a plate carrier on the other one. I'm sure of it.
Hungry Jack's chicken fries are so good, they speak for themselves.
So good.
I think they might still be in that room there. I don't know where to go here. I think they're in there. I think they're there, but they ain't going to push, are they? It was definitely somebody wearing a plate carrier that I hit. They're not aggroing to the other side. The player's in there, I'm sure they are. I'd really love to see those zombies aggro to someone. Where are they going? They're just running around the bottom. They're not going up the top. I'm sure the player's in there. I'm sure they're on this floor somewhere. So they had a Blue Mountain bag, I think, didn't they? And a plate carrier. I'm pretty sure they're still sitting in there. I might be able to see them in one of these rooms. I might be able to see them. Maybe. They might be in the kind of room with all the toilets, which doesn't have a back window, I don't think. They're gonna have to move at some point, surely. I'm gonna have to clear it, and I'm gonna die when I do. I know you're in there. Why don't you fight like a big boy?
No.
Why are you hiding?
Because you killed my friend.
He was a bad guy.
Oh, it's maybe that guy, maybe the other guy.
I should have had him then. I should have had him. He's still in the same toilet. Why don't you fight?
I'm waiting.
I could just throw a grenade if you want.
Do that.
Yeah, I'll do that. Do you have a grenade I could borrow?
Yeah. Come take it.